Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Sword Art Online anime review. This one's going to be for Alicization episode 12, The Sage in the Library. And this was a excellent episode of Sword Art Online. This is kind of one I've been waiting for a while. And overall it felt like a very complete episode. We got our action at the start, we got the reveal of a new character in Cardinal, we learned a little bit more about the Integrity Knights and how they work. And then we basically got the core of the origin of the underworld, how it was all set up, in addition to later on getting basically Quinella, the administrator, the main villain of the arc, what her backstory is. So this episode accomplished a lot, and I thought they did it really, really well. I thought the anime... I was wondering how long it would take the anime to kind of tell all of this information. And there's still a little bit more information to get to, but the core of it being told here in just one episode, while it also accomplishing a lot more, I thought it was very impressive. So let's get into talking about this. Let's talk about the fight with Eldrie, Synthesis 31. And this was a short-ish fight, but a nice fight. I like that they didn't just have Eldrie just immediately dominate Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh! That they are at this point, skilled warriors, and even though they don't have their own weapon, the 2-on-1 situation here made it a somewhat even fight. That he had to concentrate enough on just Kirito that it was a big distraction when Yu-Gi-Oh! Would join in, and vice versa. Their kind of unplanned attacks was not something he was really prepared for, and it required him to sort of show off some of the special skills of his frost scale whip. Initially, the fact that it can grow, and he can change it into having two ends of a whip, and then later on revealing a special power that it has of basically being able to turn it into a snake. Obviously giving us a tease that really high-end swords have a special form to them, and we'll begin to get into that. And obviously Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh! Swords are going to have similar powers to this when they get them back. So we see the characters continue to take a decent amount of damage. Yu-Gi-Oh! Gets hit pretty hard, Kirito gets hit pretty hard. They managed to damage Eldrie's arm a little bit, but what really, I suppose, it's sort of, the fight ends in a very kind of plot-centric way. It's not really the end of a fight as such, because it wasn't necessarily an overly fair fight. They end by basically defining in a way the core of what's happened to the Integrity Knights, that they are all just normal people who have lost their memory. So like they sort of suspect of Alice, they now know for sure with Eldrie that is the case, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually realizes that you were the one who won the tournament. And they didn't state it as such in the episode, but the idea is obviously that Sortalina, Liana, the person who Kirito was paged to, she was actually part of the tournament that Eldrie actually won to become an Integrity Knight. So this could have been Liana if she had actually won the tournament. So that's why they said the line of I seem to have fought someone like you before, and that's why Kirito mentions the Surlu style. So that kind of connects those dots. And then Yu-Gi-Oh! Knows who he is, that this is your full name. This is the name of your father, this is the name of your mother, and it's the name of his mother that basically halts him in his tracks. He drops the whip, and this thing begins to come out of his head, and they quickly realize that this is what has been done to Integrity Knights to sort of drain them of their memories, that this is why they're like this. They don't remember who they are. They only call themselves their first name Synthesis something. And obviously they don't know the full exact details behind that now, but they now have this tactic that if they can't immediately beat an Integrity Knight in combat, they can, if they know something about who that knight is, they can sort of stop them that way by trying to change them emotionally back into who they used to be. So that is a very interesting point, and the question obviously then becomes, what do they focus on to get to kind of snap Alice out of what kind of she's the way she is? And in a way, is it Yu-Gi-Oh? Is it her sister Salka? Who is it for Alice that is going to be the person that makes her go like this? That's going to be very telling. So I thought they did a really good job there. And as basically Eldrie is helpless, Dusselbert arrives, and I believe he's the guy who took Alice away in the first place. So he arrives, he uses a bow and arrow. Yu-Gi-Oh! Takes a shot right to the leg, which was pretty crazy. And they're basically run into a dead end. We get the reveal that there's something in either Kirito's head or in his hair that directs him to turn right, and they go through this portal and they're in this library. And here's where we meet the Cardinal, or just Cardinal. And she obviously reveals herself to be the Cardinal. She's sort of connected to this library. She's a very high up in the food chain, basically, member of the game. She is the Cardinal system, basically, but in kind of artificial intelligence form, that there's actually a person related to it. It's not just a system. And immediately they kind of get Yu-Gi-Oh out of the room. They're like, okay, we need to talk about stuff that Yu-Gi-Oh, it would probably be too complicated to try and explain to him the full idea of, like, Yu-Gi-Oh, Kirito actually is a human, you're not a human, and all that sort of stuff. So they send him off, like, you can read the books, they have the history of the world, and then they immediately start to talk about what's going on here. They both call each other out as being not inhabitants of the underworld, so they're not all, neither of them are basically, Fluctlights. Kirito obviously is a human diving in, and then Cardinal is a representation of the system. And this is pretty much when we get the reveal of, I suppose, the history of the underworld. Obviously time accelerated, but the experiment as it is has been going on for 450 years, and we get the origin that 4 members of Wrath dived in at the start to raise a group of 8 children on their own, so 32 kids initially. After a certain point, they left to completely, like, exit the world, and I suppose roughly over time sort of became known as, like, the gods in a way. And she reveals that one of these people, members of Wrath, had basically ill intentions, they focused a little bit too much on power, whereas in general, everyone was raised, they raised the kids to a really, like, good degree. They all grew up to be, like, intelligent, and that's why the game thrived. But the 8 kids trained by the one person grew on to become the noble. So this is where the sort of evil intent starts to come in here, that them having their sort of origins with this one person who was not quite pure of heart led to some of the bad stuff happening in the world. And obviously from there, that's where the 450 years happen. And then we, I suppose through Quinella, primarily get the origin of the Axiom Church and how she became administrator. Obviously, we're missing the aspect of the story of, like, where does Cardinal link into this, in that Quinella's story mentions Cardinal, but the being that we see in the library isn't brought up yet. So more of the story we still have to get, but what we are told here is really fascinating. Like, that initially the taboo index is just kind of ideals kind of given to the children as they grow up by the Wrath people, but it's not set in stone yet as a law in the same way that it would be. And it's basically Quinella, which is where everything begins to change. She is the daughter of, like, 2 of the lords. So I suppose the idea is that 2 of the, eventually over time, the kind of more evil intent people, 2 of those high families joined. Their daughter was Quinella. And I loved what they did here in terms of showing that she was extremely intelligent. And basically the key to her success was that she looked so heavily into the sacred arts, the system calls, that she actually gained a understanding of what it all meant. It wasn't just magical words to her. She began to realize that the system is what the entire world, call means to generate, and so on. She basically became fluent in a way at the system call system in the game, and developed those skills to the point where she could heal people. She was basically the most high level kind of mage in a way in the game. And the other key aspect here is she basically learned how to level up as well. And she sort of kept this secret from everyone, that if you used your skills and powers in the game to kill things, your authority level grows, and so you're able to use more powerful things. And when she gets older, like, she becomes basically this kind of messiah type character. She is looked up to as a god because she's the only one with this level of power, and you see the Axiom Church begin to form around her because she's performing miracles with these things and no one else is anywhere near that level. And you see her begin to make decrees like hunting is forbidden, which basically immediately stops anyone from leveling up, and that is why the world is the way it is. That, you know, the way the Integrity Knights are the only like warriors effectively in the world. It's why like even the like man at arms in each of the villages isn't particularly powerful. Why Yu-Gi-Oh is set like forever basically to just try and chop down the Gigas tree at the start with just a very minor weapon that can do tiny amounts of damage. That no one is told about the system in the game to be able to like level up your skills and strength, and she keeps that a secret to basically allow her to boost her own powers as quick as she wants. And obviously this is where the second half of the story has to come in, about like where the Integrity Knights come in, the whole Cardinal system and all. But what I liked was that you saw even at that young age the fact that she killed that fox, and it didn't mean anything to her. That as an inhabitant of that world, she doesn't know that she's just in a game. So to her, that is the same as like a kid just killing an animal in the real world, and you're meant to see it that way. And you see this this kind of fall into kind of madness in a way as she begins to grow older, and she just looks in the mirror one day and realizes that I don't have much time left. And it was tragic in a way, but you also, like, I suppose, realize what this is going to become as she basically tests the limits of the system to try and find the command that will give her access to every single system that is available. And basically on her deathbed she finally discovers it. Basically she opens the list of commands in the system, and that's what allows her to unlock these powers because of the level that she's at, to grant her her life back, her youth back, all of these high-end things that basically make her like a supernatural being in this world. And she goes as far as to do this kind of crazy system command, which basically fuses herself with the Cardinal system within the game, but it sort of has this sort of negative effect on her in that it sort of temporarily knocks her out. It gives her this relentless drive, like the Cardinal system, to forever bring order to the game, but because I suppose it's influenced in a way by her and her desire for power, it's this, you know, create order via power, and that's how she becomes the administrator, so to speak. So the Cardinal system, you would typically say, is basically the administrator powers of the game, but now they're associated with someone who has kind of ill intent for the world. And obviously, I suppose next time out we're going to find out exactly how, you know, this girl, the Cardinal, came from Quinella and so on. But in terms of getting us to this point of, like, we saw Quinella in one of the earlier episodes, like this kind of teenage girl, basically. This is how that character came to be. This is the leader of the Axiom Church, the main enemy in terms of the overall quest, which at this point is to get Alice back. The person who did that to her is Quinella. And what I like in all of this is that, you know, like, there's still more going on here. Like, there's the whole Dark Territory thing, which was mentioned much earlier on in the series. That hasn't been brought back up again yet, but that the whole Integrity Knights thing comes from her, and it's, I think it's just a very, like, fitting kind of situation that we're in now, of like, okay, everything's in place now, we sort of know roughly where we need to go, that to some degree a confrontation with Quinella is incoming at some point. Where do we go from there? So as I said, excellent episode. Very impressed with the show so far. You know, we're 12 episodes in. The next episode is not until January like 5th or something like that. We're taking basically 2 weeks off, I believe, roughly 2 weeks off over Christmas and the New Year's, which I sort of expected, and then we'll end the first quarter, the first core of animation, with episode 13. So that's going to be cool. I believe we're getting a new opening after that and so on. So pretty cool. We're like a quarter of the way, getting close to a quarter of the way through the story. So we're making good progress. A lot of stuff is happening, and as I said, I thought this episode accomplished a lot with the fight with Eldrie at the start, learning about the Integrity Knights, then getting introduced to the Cardinal. I assume the next episode will be more heavy on like her specifically, the Cardinal, like we meet her, and we'll get more of like her personality and like what drives her, why she's locked to the library, and so on next time. So yeah, that's my review for this episode of Sword Art Online Alicization. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.